Good afternoon and good morning, depending on where you are in the world. So thanks for joining us live today for Eloqua landing pages. So today's session is all about personalization and also looking at some use cases to help you get more from your landing pages. So let's dive in and get a closer look. So first of all, just some just some housekeeping for those of you that may join us regularly. We record these sessions and replays will be available in our blog, and of course, we'll send you an email with a link in order to access that. Please feel free to ask questions throughout the session. Just use the Zoom Q&A function. You can also use the chat function as well. The chat is private, whereas the Q&A is visible to everybody. So please feel free. If you do have questions, we'd love to try and answer those questions for you. My name is Derek Bell. I'm your host, and I'm the Director of Marketing and Customer Success here at Marketing Cube, and we've been a long-standing Oracle Eloqua partner since 2007. So thanks again for making some time to be with us today. Adrian Jones, our CEO and founder, is also on the line, and Adrian will be helping to answer some questions through Q&A and the chat function. So let's keep him busy. All right, what is our agenda for the next 45 minutes? So if there are any questions that have been submitted, we will address those. And you can do that at the point of registering. So once you register and reach that confirmation page, you'll see an allocation there for you to submit any questions. I'll show you how you can do that at any time, actually, throughout today's session as well. So if you think of it next week, you can go ahead and submit that question, and we will answer it during the following month at the webinar. So first thing we want to cover is staying in control of your assets, which is really looking at branding more so and helping you realize the ability of Eloqua to help you from a CSS and styling point of view to produce far more on-brand communications. We'll then take that same logic into landing pages and also ask the question, should I be using Eloqua landing pages or my CMS, i.e. the website? And we'll explore that in a bit of detail. An important part of anything to do with the landing page, typically though, is the form. And so we'll look at the form and understand that in a bit more detail. We won't be going into the mechanics of the form, but just some of the high-level considerations, especially from a security point of view, in relation to where data is and where data sits. We're then going to show you one of our clients, a Singapore-based technology firm called they're called Atlas Loves Travel, and you will meet them as I share some of the work that we've done with them to develop some landing pages as well. Release 25B is due in May, so we unfortunately don't have any updates to give you. I can give you a sneak peek if I remember of one thing that we believe is happening. But besides that, we'll know more next Thursday. So we'll explore that and get some details to you. All right, so stay in control. So the key point I really wanted to make here was to emphasize that from a branding point of view, the ability of the Eloqua landing pages and emails to be on brand is pretty solid. And hopefully that's your experience. Hopefully the assets that you're producing within your organization are definitely on brand. And if they're not on brand, well, let's have a chat, because there are definitely some things you can do to improve that overall experience. And hopefully you have some of that experience when you register each month with the user group and see what's in front of you and understand what's going on as an Eloqua user. You're obviously familiar with it. And so I'm going to expand on that a little bit as we move forward today. But the key message I wanted to really try and get across here is that there's no reason why your Eloqua landing pages cannot look the same as your website. And as I indicated in the invitation to you this month, while they can look exactly the same as the website, the question perhaps is, should they? And I'm going to suggest to you that perhaps no. Now, from a cosmetic point of view or from a branding point of view, yes, they absolutely should look the same. So the right font and the right colors and the imagery and that sort of stuff. What about all of the other buttons and options and menus, etc., that are available on your website? Do we necessarily want to carry that same level of functionality across to the landing page? And I'll explain here a little bit later as to why I think the answer is no on that particular point. So let's jump in and get into a bit more detail. So, first question, Eloqua versus your CMS. So, why should I be looking at Eloqua landing pages versus the CMS? And should I just use landing pages or should I just use the CMS? I think the answer to that one is no. It's definitely going to be a combination. But we'll try and give you some criteria to help understand and determine why the Eloqua landing page is a good option. All right. So, what's possible, I think, is probably the first thing we need to understand. And as I said earlier, the key thing to understand is that essentially, because your Eloqua landing page is HTML, there's absolutely no reason why it cannot look exactly the same as a page on your website or your CMS. Okay. So, you have two options within Eloqua. You've got the source editor, which is the traditional HTML. You open it up, it's a black screen, and you start coding. Now, for some of us on the call, that might be a really simple thing and something you can do intuitively. But certainly for more of us, including myself, the design editor is a far more attractive way to build landing pages. And again, there's no reason why that page can't be as on brand as your website is. So, same fonts and colors and so on and so forth. Now, the design editor does give you the ability to add some HTML. So, should you need to, for whatever reason, sometimes you've got a widget of some sort that you want to put onto the website, maybe a countdown timer of some sort. All of those things you can definitely add using some HTML blocks to drop into your design editor landing page. Now, the key thing to remember that the CSS, which is that styling functionality, that's how your website looks the way it does, is because of the CSS. And that drives fonts, it drives your H1, H2, H3, etc. Within the website. It helps with color selection and all those sorts of things. And also the way it functions, JavaScript can be really helpful in doing that. And we use a little bit of JavaScript every month on the Eloqua landing pages that you visit when you register. Now, you may or may not even have noticed. Let me, in fact, just jump in here and show you. A little bit easier sometimes to show these things. When you arrive at the registration page, if you come from an email, you'll have noticed that the selection of your preferred webinar is the Americas, Wednesday, 2nd of April. Now, you can change it, of course, but we default that using a little bit of JavaScript and some magic in between the email and the landing page. But it's the landing page where the real magic happens. And so by bringing that information in and showing it right there, we're able to just alleviate one more field that you need to populate. So in most examples, when you reach the registration page, your email address should pre-populate. The selection of the webinar, excuse me, should pre-populate. First name, last name, company name, and then some of these should also pre-populate as well, depending on how much we know about you or how many times you've registered in the past, as an example. And there's JavaScript also working to do a few other things here. One is this level of functionality at the top of the form where I can, in fact, click there and then it deletes anything. So sometimes if you share your email with a colleague, they click on it, it pre-populates with the information from the email, which is clearly not them, it's you. And so the click here to just empty the form can be quite helpful from that point of view. Then the other piece of JavaScript that we've got is this level of functionality that you can see here at the bottom of the page, which is the opt-in box. And specifically what we wanted to do, I mean, this level of functionality, adding I agree to opt into communications, that's native to Eloqua, that's fine, you can do that. You could also add a text box, but what you can't do natively is include a hyperlink behind the privacy policy, for example. And so with a little bit of CSS, a little bit of JavaScript, we've then hardwired that now into our templates. And so for me as the user, I don't have to do anything each month. I just simply access my form template, add it to my relevant landing page that's got all the styling, etc. applied, and that information just happens every month. I don't have to do anything. In fact, it was probably done years ago, several years ago, and so it just doesn't need to be altered in any way. So that's just one example of where you can use a little bit of HTML, a little bit of CSS, but then for you and I as the user, we don't have to worry about it. We don't have to bother having to code anything, even look at it. It's just hardwired in. So it's nice and easy. Now, what I want to do here is just show you one example of the one of our clients here in New Zealand. This is one of our clients within the engineering school. So we work with the entire university, and then there are obviously different faculties. This is the engineering team. So what you're looking at right now is their CMS, and as you can see, when you look at the CMS, like any standard website, there's lots of information to look at. So top line menus, and you can see that just from a visual and I suppose a little bit of added complexity, it's written in English and then also in Maori, the other language within New Zealand. And so it becomes quite busy, but it's a website and that's okay. We kind of expect that from a website. We want lots of information. We want good menus. We want to be able to find things. But there comes a time where you want to present a call to action, and then you want to have much greater control over what happens and the experience or the CX that you're delivering. So what I want to do is draw your attention to the button at the bottom of the screen, which is why choose engineering. Okay, so nice big blue button. So if I click on that big blue button, now I'm showing you slides, obviously. So, but you click on that big blue button, and you now you leave the CMS and you now come through to an Eloqua landing page. And so what you're able to do here now is modify and present a far more personal experience. And so this particular landing page, the image at the top, for instance, was in fact dynamic content from memory. Then the call to action is really clear. But what we've done is we've removed a lot of the busyness, okay? Because the key objective here is to get the person to now click on start the quiz. So a couple of things are happening here. The quiz is all happening within Eloqua. It's simply an Eloqua form that is presented at different points across, I think it's 2 or 3 different pages. It's one form, though, that does that. And then based on the responses that the individual provides within the quiz, they then get a recommendation for different courses that they may want to study within engineering. So they present various options like environmental engineering or structural engineering or civil engineering, etc. And so they kind of ask a range of different questions, which are then place some recommendations on that final page. And then following the final page, the person receives a very tailored email using some dynamic content because all of the survey responses are captured and stored into a custom object within Eloqua. So then the dynamic content is able to reference the entries within the custom object, and off they go, and they get a lovely personalized email based on that information. Now, because the information is then stored in the custom object, it can then also be used in subsequent campaigns. So I think from memory, what happened here was they went through this process, took the quiz, received that email. They then fell into a tailored nurture campaign that took them that little bit step further. Now, regardless of you being a university or a financial services firm or a manufacturing firm, whatever your industry is, you can, I imagine, look at this and start to see some benefits and ways of delivering a far more personalized experience. And so the university chose to use, I'll just go back to the website so you see that again from a comparison point of view. So the university chose to use the Eloqua landing page for a couple of reasons. One of the main reasons was the speed at which they could get it produced. It was much faster to happen within the Eloqua landing page construct than it was to have to go back to the web team within the central area of the university and get those things put into a schedule and a timeline, etc., and get that all built. That was one reason. The other reason was a more personalized experience. And also they wanted to be able to capture that information and store it within Eloqua to use for future campaigns as well. So it served many purposes and has done really well for them. They've had great success. I think they're in year 3 of running it. They've tweaked and changed the quiz a bit over each year, but it's worked really well for them. And so maybe other faculties within the university should be looking at the same thing. So again, there we go, looking at the landing page. So you see especially the footer area, right? So the footer area is really clean, nice and simple. It's kind of the bare bones of the information that they really need to be sharing, privacy policies, those sorts of things. All right. Sorry, let me go one more. Here we go. Okay, so things to consider. So if you're in a meeting and maybe you've got the web team in that meeting with you and they're sort of waving the flag and cheering on why we should be using the website and no, let's not use Eloqua. And you're like, well, why should we be using Eloqua? Well, these typically would be the key reasons as to why Eloqua would generally win. And generally, I would also say to you that really the purpose of the Eloqua landing pages is for very campaign specific content. It's really not designed, or I would discourage you from using Eloqua landing pages for kind of always on things that need to be maintained on a regular basis. So it just, yeah, it's not really what they're for. You can, of course, you could use them for those things if you want, but it does add a bit more maintenance to the process. So why use Eloqua for campaign specific exercises? Dynamic content is a big one, and the ability to use that dynamic content both with copy and with images. Okay, so both. The field merge personalization is a big one as well. Being able to greet people when they arrive at the Eloqua landing page by saying, welcome, Derek, welcome, and including their company name potentially. If you were a university, you could be looking at using dynamic content to present imagery that supports the most recent expressions of interest that that person has given you in relation to courses that they may want to do or areas of study that they may want to do. The pre-filling of forms is a big one. So one of the big reasons we would use Eloqua landing pages is typically because we want to use it from a lead capture point of view and to present a form to people. So by the native ability of Eloqua to deliver a pre-filled form, just like you experience when you register for the user group each month, is it helps with reducing form abandonment. And it also just delivers a much nicer experience to people. They can see there are a series of questions, but awesome, half the form's filled in. I just need to check this and this and this, and then they're in. The other thing is the speed. And I would definitely say to you that if you're accessing your landing pages like I do with the Eloqua user group each month from a range of templates, that quite genuinely, those pages can be live in minutes. Let me just take you back into Eloqua. So here is the landing page that you registered for this month. And so this is all from a template. And there's things like JavaScript, a little bit of JavaScript, does a few little magical things for us. The CSS is all in here as well. So that's part of the CSS right there. And so all of that just kind of works together. And I think I opened up, yeah, so here is that same landing page actually in a browser versus in Eloqua. So you may or may not be able to tell, but for instance, our font that we use across all of our Marketing Cube assets is a railway font versus just the standard Arial. So, or Helvetica is what we're using as our standard default in Eloqua. That's what you're seeing there between the two. The CSS is also being applied to deliver a little bit of magic in relation to the overlay that you see here in the footer of our landing page as well. And the other areas would be the form. Yeah, so which I pointed out to you earlier. So part of the JavaScript and the form work together to produce some of the styling in relation to the form as well. But honestly, it probably takes me longer to come up with the copy for the headings in these areas and the agendas. That would take me longer to do than it would to actually build the page itself. So I simply come into my landing page area. All of those things are available as templates. And so it makes life a lot easier in that process. So if I go to create, I'll just type in nothing there for the moment so I can show you what this looks like. And so here they are. So if I type in user group as my kind of keywords, there you'll see they're sitting right there. And so most of these have been updated recently. Some are a little bit older, but they're all pretty much the same and on brand. And so I just come in here, access these each month, and I'm ready to rock and roll. So it's much faster to work from templates. And when you can work from templates that have been styled with all of your necessary styling and CSS involved, well, it just makes sense to do it that way. And it can happen really fast. So my suggestion to you is to make an informed choice, whether you use the CMS or whether you use the landing page. And I think a lot of that comes down to what the objective is. And so I mentioned to you earlier, I said, I think it was that from a campaign specific point of view, your Eloqua landing pages really are a better option. And so what's the objective? Is it lead capture? Is it for an event registration? Is it maybe accessing thought leadership, delivering a survey, advertising? So if you're spending money on Google or LinkedIn or Facebook or wherever it may be, you may want to bring people to a far more controlled environment versus them having to potentially go to your website and maybe a page within the website. And then the problem is you then lose people, right? Because you've got all this other great navigation and other really cool topics and visuals, and you could lose people. So keep them focused. And if the result is they need to submit a form of some sort, whatever that form may be for, then the Eloqua landing page is probably a better option in that process. Gamification as well. So keeping in mind, everything is HTML, so you can code anything on your Eloqua landing pages. And so if gamification in any way is something that you wanted to explain, explore, then yeah, use an Eloqua landing page to do it. It can probably be built a lot faster. Okay, so I wanted to show you a couple of examples of some landing pages that provide some flexibility, but also are on brand and live within minutes, right? So what's not to love is the point there. All right. So just to get some basics down. So let's say we have a page, we have a form on that page, we submit the form, we then get a confirmation page with a nice big green tick, and the email is sent, or the confirmation email is sent to us. Fundamentally, that's what you experience each month with the user group. When you register, you come to one page, there's one form. There are, in fact, two confirmation pages, one for the Americas and EMEA, which is you guys today, and then we do a different confirmation page for the Asia Pacific region as well. So two confirmation emails. Now, what about a microsite? What about combining multiple Eloqua landing pages together in a single kind of standalone microsite? So you may have an annual roadshow. If you're a university, you might have open days on campus where you bring prospective students on campus to help them meet the faculty and attend a whole bunch of different workshops, etc. Financial services firms like to do these sort of annual roadshows quite often, where they'll talk about their portfolios, etc., meet with their financial advisors, those sorts of things. Or it could be an educational tour. It could be a whole range of things. Whatever it is, you can use some Eloqua landing pages to build out a microsite. And again, by not having to rely on the IT team or the web team to help you, by having it all inside of Eloqua, you have all those advantages of making sure it's personalized, making sure forms auto-populate, using dynamic content to be reflective more so of the individual that you're talking to and that is visiting the page. And you can bring all of those things together. So that's just one example. In this example, we chose an event that might have multiple sessions, for example. So you have a homepage, talk about the event, you can have buttons that lead off to event sessions, etc., and giving people the ability then to register for those relevant sessions. So a whole range of options there. So here are three that I wanted to share with you. We kind of already looked in detail at the University of Auckland, but let me show you my Eloqua. Now, this is one that you actually visit. You see this every month when you register. This serves as our confirmation page, or there's a page that looks like this that serves as that confirmation page. However, if at any point during the month, this is what I was talking about earlier, if at any point in the month you think to yourself, I really would like to pose this question to Derek and the team at Marketing Cube about Eloqua. Well, easy. If you just simply type in myeloqua.com into your browser, this is where you will arrive. Now, of course, this is an Eloqua landing page. And so what we've done is we just simply purchased myeloqua.com, bought the domain, which I was really pleasantly surprised that we were able to buy and was available. So we purchased myeloqua.com. We then redirected that to the standard Eloqua landing page URL, so the subdomains or microsites that you would be familiar with. And there you go. It works. Shazam, right? So all this is a series of, in this case, 4 different landing pages. And all it is really just a little bit of smoke and mirrors to make it behave like a web page or like like a website versus being. So when I click on these, you'll notice I'm not getting a new browser tab. So I've turned that function off so that it behaves more like a website and people can navigate through. You'll notice when you do start to click away and do that, you'll see that's where the URL changes. Now, you would notice that because you're a marketer and you're an Eloqua client, but most punters probably would never even notice that that's happening. But all the relevant tracking and stuff sits in there. We have submit a question concept. So with that one, we have that one shoot out to be a separate tab. And so on and so forth. But if you go there from an email or with your cookies and stuff in play, I'm using a browser here. I use Microsoft Edge, but I never submit any forms on it. I only use it when I'm presenting to clients. So it should pre-populate for you when you visit those areas. So that's one example of a microsite. Let's jump in and have a look at another one. Now, this one is probably the content of this one is more oriented to Australia. We're having reasonably significant changes to our Privacy Act, which occurred last December. And as a result, that obviously will impact us as digital marketers within the Australian market or for any other organizations that may be selling into Australia. A little bit like you're probably familiar with the GDPR in Europe, very similar. And so, again, we elected to create, we ummed and ahed about, should this maybe go on our website? Should it be the CMS? Or should we do it in Eloqua? In this particular example, I kind of managed the website as well inside Marketing Cube. So it wasn't a matter of me having to battle with the development team or the web team, etc., as to why I chose to use Eloqua. But I chose Eloqua for a range of reasons. One was in relation to personalization and coming down to field merges. And there are a few instances throughout this microsite where I do use some field merges to personalize different things, and then also dynamic content. There's a little bit of dynamic content tucked away in some of these various pages as well. So again, this is really very similar to the My Eloqua microsite, but it just gives you a little bit more information and tips and ideas. And it's really simple and very quick and easy for me to come in here and add things that might be happening. So here we have our federal government is running a Privacy Awareness Week, which is really targeted towards businesses, but also to consumers to make them, to educate them more about their digital privacy and how they should be aware of these things. And so we're just sort of sharing the fact that campaign's coming up. So once that's done and dusted at the end of June, then I'll remove that and probably replace it with something else. So all sorts of information available there. So those are just two examples of using what are just Eloqua landing pages, linked together to create essentially a microsite, which gives you more control over the experience that you're delivering. And the University of Auckland one I shared with you already. So let's go past that one. So I can see we've got a question there from Emily. Do I need to purchase a domain to create a microsite in Eloqua? Technically speaking, Emily, no, you don't. I do purely from the point of view, from a marketing point of view, really, because as you are probably aware, so you can see up in that top left-hand corner, so our subdomain is, or our microsite, technically, as Eloqua calls it, is enablement.marketingcube.com.au. And then there's, if we get rid of all that tracking, just so you can see it, and then there's sort of the pretty URL that sits here. And so that URL becomes quite messy. Okay, I think you'd agree from marketing. That's pretty horrible to try and promote that. It's easy from a click point of view. People don't have to write it out or type it out, etc. But if I told you had to remember enablement.marketingcube.com.au/my/Eloqua, I mean, it just gets a bit crazy. So that's why we elected to purchase a subdomain. And I'm sure it's very similar in the US and parts of Europe. I mean, subdomain, the domains are not expensive, and they're usually, what you're purchasing is usually not a big brand thing anyway. It's usually the name of your event that you're hosting, or maybe a name of something that aligns with some thought leadership that you're producing, just something catchy. And so they're not expensive, and they're just an annual fee. So yeah, so that's why we chose to do that. But strictly speaking, no, you don't have to do that. So yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. Thanks for asking that question. All right, let's go back to the next step. So forms, forms really play a really pivotal role in this whole exercise because that's how we capture the lead, right? That's how we get the information. And so I call it a match made in digital heaven. So one of the key things I want to try and get across to you here is the security. I mean, I think it was late last year, we spent a whole session here at the user group looking at the functional areas and parts of forms and how to do that. So that's not what I want to do today. What I want to do here today is kind of give you a bit more of a geeky architectural view and understanding. So if we look at your ecosystem today, for many of us, it looks like this, where you've got Eloqua, you may have a CRM platform or a student management platform or a donor platform, depending on your environment. You're then going to have a website. Everyone pretty much has a website these days. And what I wanted to focus on was the idea that you may also be using third-party form apps in concert with your website. So a lot of the websites, some website tools will have form functionality built in. Others require you to add third-party apps to that website in order to have form functionality. And that, I would suggest to you, becomes a little bit of a security risk. Let me explain that in a bit more detail. If you wanted to scan that QR code, by the way, that will take you to a page on our website, our CMS, funnily enough, which just talks about some of the ways that we can support you and help you with some of the forms that you may want to do. So if you want to really beef them up and create some very cool templates, then we can help you in that process. And we can go so far as the CSS and the JavaScript and all that kind of stuff as well with your landing pages. So using Eloqua forms in place of third-party forms delivers certainly a far more secure CX. And that's one of the key things we want to get across, is the secure nature of the form data being submitted straight into Eloqua, and if necessary, moved on to your CRM platform. And so a very secure environment for people to do that. Again, we talked about the pre-population, that to avoid form abandonment, that pre-population, and your Eloqua form does that natively. So that's good. And then obviously progressive profiling is another really cool way to drive that experience and to be a winning reason as to why using the Eloqua form is a better solution than potentially using a third-party app of some sort. So forms can help you, whether it's event registration, think about post-event surveys, whether it's for a webinar, an in-person event, or maybe even a hybrid event, using your Eloqua forms to deliver post-event surveys. Also NPS and CSAT, so Net Promoter Score and customer satisfaction surveys, are two other really great examples. We've had a number of clients over the years where they've been using third-party applications to deliver NPS or customer sat, but have realized that, really, why can't we bring that into Eloqua? Eloqua has that functionality built in. Now, arguably, you may want to do a little bit of magic to present it slightly differently and so on and so forth. So again, there's no limitation there. It's HTML at the end of the day. And especially with assets like that really don't change, like an event changes every month, whereas your NPS and CSAT generally don't change. The magic comes in the consistency of the questions and then being able to compare responses. Contact us is a very standard one, and even case management can be another one. So many of you will be using CRM platforms that probably contain case management or service request management type of functionality, and there's no reason why you can't use your Eloqua landing pages and forms to capture that information and then push it directly into the CRM platform to kick off the case management process. So there's more. That bullet pointed list could probably keep going, but I'll stop there. So the key thing I really wanted to try and get across here is the benefit of using your Eloqua forms from a security point of view. So again, if we look at Eloqua, you've been using Eloqua for some time. It's obviously got all your information in there. You then have CMS, so your website will typically be another platform sitting elsewhere. Now, you may be using third-party apps, whether it be forms or other pieces of technology. And then usually from the CMS, you might have integration that flows either into Eloqua or perhaps into the CRM, or in some cases, maybe into both. And you may well have other platforms that it's talking to. So every integration point essentially becomes a little bit of a security risk. So if we can it'll reduce the number of integration points, that enhances security, which has got to be a good thing. So what I would suggest to you is less is more. And so from a third-party app point of view, we can eliminate the third-party app construct altogether. We can then use Eloqua to deliver your forms in one of two ways. We can either embed the form onto the CMS, or we can use an Eloqua landing page and a form to deliver that. And I'll show you the difference between the two here in a minute, just so you're clear on what I mean. So in this case, what we're saying is we could, in fact, the CMS is not really part of the story anymore, except if it has an embedded form on it. But from a data point of view, the data flows directly from the embedded form into Eloqua. The data is not going from the form into the CMS and then into Eloqua. So we reduce that step. We go directly from the form directly into Eloqua. And then from there, as is necessary, depending on what your requirements are, it can then flow directly into the CRM platform as well. So if you're talking to the people in IT, they would probably like that solution. Less is more, basically, and certainly a more secure approach. So let me show you two examples. The first one is where we include a link in the CMS navigation. And so I'm going to take you to marketingcube.com.au to show you how we do it, just as one example. So you'll see our top line navigation here on the website. If I click on Contact Us and just keep an eye here on the URL here in the browser, as soon as I click on Contact Us, in this case, I've elected to keep the page in a single tab, so it's not exiting, but you will have noticed that the URL has changed. And so now what you're looking at is a Eloqua landing page with a form sitting on the landing page. So that's the second option in that list that I was showing you. Let me show you another one. So this is now looking at an embedded form as an iframe on a website. So this is one of our clients here in Australia, Atlas Loves Travel. They're a Singapore-based technology firm focusing on travel technology. And so what they wanted to do was to keep people nice and close and not have them go off in different directions. So the big get started option here. So what they're trying to do here is they have a range of travel agents around the world whom they service, and they're obviously trying to grow their business. And so get started is what they're looking for everybody to do. So they drive people here, they click on get started, and they arrive here. So now what you're looking at is in fact still the CMS. Okay, but the form that you can see here is actually embedded on this page, and it's embedded on the page as an iframe. But it means whenever the information is submitted through this form, it goes from the form directly into Eloqua. And in this particular example, it then also flows into their CRM platform as well. So two slightly different experiences that you can see there. Both hopefully reasonably seamless for the end user. And why you would choose to do one over the other, there are a range of different reasons. Sometimes it's speed. That can be, it's probably the big one is speed. It may also be around the skill level. You may not have the HTML expertise. Now, of course, we helped our friends at Atlas build all this out, so our web developers were able to manage this whole process for them and to get it looking pretty cool. So we can do similar things for you, but you need them to be done. All right. So yeah, just a little bit more about Atlas Loves Travel. So a really interesting company. So what they're doing is focusing on the technology that enables the travel agent to access. You may have even noticed this yourself. If you've planned a trip recently and been to a travel agent, it may well that, for a big portion of your travel, you might have selected Lufthansa, or you may have selected United Airlines. These are big global brands, etc. And every travel agent in the world generally will have access to be able to go in, find you a seat, get the best price and book it, and so on and so forth. However, when you start to get to your destination, and maybe your destination is in Thailand, I don't know if everybody's on now. I'm going to forget the name of the show. White Lotus. I don't know if everybody's watching White Lotus at the moment. Maybe you're in Thailand. And so now you're wanting to do some domestic Thai travel. And the best rates are really on some of the smaller domestic Thai airlines. Now, but your travel agent in Germany or in New York doesn't have access. So what they do is they simply go onto the website of that relevant airline and they book it for you on your behalf just to make it easy. So what Atlas Loves Travel does is they enable the travel agent to access all of those budget carriers through their platform in one easy location versus having to go out to different airlines and check. So yeah, really interesting company in relation to what they're doing. And yeah, they're going gangbusters. So if you hear about them, say hi. All right. So release 25B of Eloqua is due in May. And as I said at the start of the webinar, we don't have details just yet, but that will be next Thursday morning. Thursday morning my time. So it'll be Wednesday your time, East Coast US. But if you wanted to subscribe, if you scan that QR code on your mobile, you can then subscribe to our important updates. So what we do is we attend those webinars, we digest all the information, and then provide our updates and our view on some of those. Now, the one thing, sneaky peek, that I think we're going to see in May is a pretty major rebuild of the component library. So for those of you who are familiar, this area right here within Eloqua. So and it's going to be quite a shift. To give you an example, today you go into an email, you can then create content blocks within that email, and you can make those content blocks available on landing pages or on forms. Okay, that's cool. The shift in thinking now, from what I understand, and you don't hold me to this, but my understanding is that what we'll end up with is you'll go into the component library, you'll create your component or your piece of whatever it is you need to create. And then you're going to say, okay, I need this to be a content block on a landing page. I need it to be a content block on an email, but I also need it to be available as dynamic content. And I also want to have it available as shared content. So it kind of shifts the process around, or flips it on its head. And I think it's a really cool idea. Fingers crossed, that's what we'll hear a little bit more about next week. And then hopefully we'll see that in May. But a little bit of change coming up. But of course, you can always return here to the user group. We'll be covering any of those sorts of changes. So we look forward to that. All right. Next month, I've got the Asia Pac date there, but actually it's the same for the Americas and EMEA. So let me change that to your episode. There you go. So in May, we'll be on the 7th of May, and that will be at 9 a.m. Now, yes, sorry, guys. I really messed that up, didn't I? You'll have to forgive me. It is after midnight here in my part of the world. Okay. So it'll be 9 a.m. Eastern, Wednesday, 7th of May. So we look forward to seeing you then. We'll get some information out to you. Happy to hang on the line here if there are any other questions that you may have. But otherwise, have a wonderful rest of your day, and we look forward to seeing you next month. Thanks again, everybody. Bye-bye.